Welcome to Ever Living Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Cindy.
And I'm Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. On Ever Living, on Ever Living, we showcase the voices and stories of people who work and pray to protect life in New England and beyond. Welcome to Ever Living.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. How are you, Cindy?
Good. I'm doing well. How's your summer going?
It's going well. I feel like it's been a few weeks since we've really gotten to chat. I've been busy with some work things. We did one of the weeks I missed, we were doing a protest outside of the CVS headquarters in Rhode Island. I did it with some of the students I work with because CVS, they dispense the abortion pill. So we were trying to tell the people who worked at CVS headquarters about this and kind of raise awareness about the fact that they're selling abortion pills. So it's been busy, but good. I can't believe it's August. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's winding down. Well, Jessica, when you hear Action League, what do you think of? Action League.
Ooh, I think of like superheroes.
Yeah. If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Ending abortion.
Oh, wow. Okay, so is that like a once and for all? I
don't know. I guess, yeah, right? Like, I feel like if I had the ability to do that myself, I know that I can't. I'm only a small part of the puzzle, and, God plays a big role in helping with this, but that would be my superpower. But maybe invisibility as well. I feel like that'd be cool. That'd be
okay.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think to end abortion, I think it's the power to change hearts and minds, right? It's the power to really reach people, and that they would realize that they don't want to abort any more children, well, we have someone from an Action League today.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Let's welcome Eric Scheidler, the Executive Director of Pro-Life Action League. Welcome, Eric.
Glad to be with you.
So, hi, Eric. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be with you guys. I'm excited to be in this new space too of podcasting, because I'm a huge podcast fan myself. I've got a couple of podcasts I listen to religiously, most of them having to do with soccer and improv, but I also follow many other kinds of podcasts. So it's really great to be in this podcast space and sharing the message.
Awesome. So you're a yes and guy, right?
Yes, and I like to do a few other things too. I'm really into art. I recently started taking art classes and discovering a whole new world there of getting back into the kind of painting and drawing like I used to do back in high school. So that's been really fun. And I think the whole improv thing sort of opened me up to that. Saying yes to somebody's goofy idea on stage, that translates into other areas. Saying yes to the idea of going back to the arts, in your middle age, or saying yes to becoming involved in the fight to protect babies and their moms from abortion. I think we can all from the idea of like improvising that way, saying yes to something and then adding something more to it.
Okay, let's talk about your parents, how they said yes. They said yes and to protecting lives back in the 70s, right? Can you tell us about your parents and how it all started?
Well, interestingly enough, you might want to say that my parents came into the issue with like a yes, but they said yes to the idea of joining the pro-life movement way back in 1973, shortly after Roe v. Wade was decided. But they thought it would only take about 5 years. They thought that the American people are good at heart. That my dad saw Roe v. Wade as a kind of suicide note that the society had written to itself, kind of giving up on the future, giving up on posterity, the posterity that we talk about in the United States Constitution, that we want to secure the blessings of liberty for our posterity. Well, maybe we don't anymore. But they thought the American people are good at heart and would quickly see the injustice of abortion and, pass a constitutional amendment to end it or do whatever it would take. So they said, we'll give it 5 years. 5 years later, they were still struggling in the thick of all of it to make some headway. And it became clear that it was going to take a lot more than just 5 years to end the scourge of abortion in America.
Wow. So how do you think your parents would view like 2025, where we are now?
Well, my mother, Ann, is still very active with the Pro-Life Action League. She is our vice president, and she's actually at my office right now, reaching out to some of our donors and sharing with them what we're doing. So she takes a very active role. My father passed away in January of 2021, so he did not live to see Roe versus Wade overturned, but he was very excited to see what was going to happen with the Dobbs case, which was not, by that time, was on everybody's radar. You know, the hearing came later that year, and then finally the ruling in 2022. I think he would be proud to see that the pro-life movement is still carrying on, still fighting, is still winning some legal victories. I know that he would be really dismayed, though, to see some of the losses we've suffered since Dobbs was handed down. The most heartbreaking of all probably are the referenda in Missouri and Ohio, two states that we saw as really pro-life. You know, Ohio had a heartbeat bill that was an act that was protecting babies, and Missouri had completely banned abortion. So those are real heartbreakers. I know that he really took those things to heart. So he would really be challenged by some of what we've seen happen. But above all, my father really believed in putting people to work in their own spheres of influence wherever they can. And that's something that we continue to do with the Pro-Life Action League. We are holding nationwide events every year that give people an opportunity to get actively involved in their own community. The next one coming up is the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children, which was very, very dear to my dad. He would always speak at that event that we held at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Chicago, where 3,000 babies were buried. And he would share the story of how he recovered the bodies of those babies back in the 1980s and worked with Cardinal Bernardine to get them buried here. And we sent the bodies of these babies all over the country to be buried where they were killed, so they would be back home. So we visit the burial places of aborted babies. We visit the memorial markers that were set up in their honor that aren't burial places at many, many Catholic churches and cemeteries and other locations. That's taking place on September 13th. It's the second Saturday of September every year. And it's a very, very moving event. We hear from women who have had abortions. They tell us their stories of regret, and they also tell us their stories of transformation and healing. We hear from adoptive parents about what it means to them that some other mom chose life for her baby. We hear from former abortion providers. We hear from those who counsel women who've had abortions, who are recovering from abortions. So if you go to one of these events around the country, you will be moved. And one story in particular that I'd like to share, and my father was still with us at the time that this happened, and I know it meant a lot to him. We were wrapping up one of our memorial services on the Day of Remembrance. This is maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. And a woman came up to me, and she had tears in her eyes. She was bawling. But she wasn't, she had just learned that her first grandchild had been aborted.
Wow.
The way she found out was an insurance bill showed up. And that's how she found out her daughter was still on their insurance. She was away at college, and she had had an abortion. And the woman, she was full of anguish over this happening. But the reason she was full of tears that day wasn't because of the, wasn't solely because of the heartbreak from that, which also included the heartbreak of having this secret to herself. She didn't tell her husband that their grandchild had been aborted because she didn't want to. And she didn't want to drive a wedge between the father and the daughter. So she was alone in her sorrow. She was completely isolated until she found out about this event. She could come and she could cry for that baby that she lost, that grandchild, that granddaughter or grandson that she lost. And so she was coming up with tears of gratitude in her eyes. Thank you for giving me a place to come and be sad about this, because I've been carrying this around by myself for months now. So that became an opportunity for healing for her. And that was a real insight to me, that healing it's not just mourning for these babies that we're doing. It's offering healing to our entire society over the wounds of abortion that run so deep. We don't even know sometimes. you know, how deeply those wounds run.
Yeah.
You know, mothers who are having a hard time caring for their born children because of guilt over an abortion that they haven't processed yet, for example.
Yeah.
And so we need this healing, and that's a big part of what this event is going to be about.
Something
Yeah.
I've noticed is I do a lot of on-campus outreach in my role, and something I've noticed on campus is some of the people who are the most angry about the activism we're doing on campus are women who have had abortions, and it seems like they're just, you know, so they need healing, right? They need maybe a space like this to be able to remember their child and, like you said, exactly, like heal and not only mourn but also heal from it and get through those emotions. So
one of the real horrible things about abortion in our society is that it's a wound that we're not allowed to acknowledge. It's a wound that we're not allowed to talk about. It's become so polemic and so politicized, you know, and we know that people who are self-described as pro-choice, who support, you know, legal abortion, often nevertheless struggle with abortion themselves and regret the abortions that they've had. If you go to a website like shoutyourabortion.com, which is run by pro-abortion people, you will find sad story after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy of women who feel horrible about their abortions. And they'll talk about, you know, I haven't slept a good night's sleep since I had my abortion 2 years ago, but I know it was the right decision. So their brain is in conflict with itself. There's a part of you that knows this is the worst thing you ever have done. You haven't been at peace since then, but another part of you being forced to believe that it was an affirming choice because that's what the politics say or what, you know, the social propagandists say.
Yeah.
So we're giving, and we know that, you know, when it comes to like the trauma of the abortion pill, which is so isolating, women are having these abortions all by themselves. You know, the embryo or the tiny little fetus is showing up in their, you know, in their menstrual pad or in their toilet. They have to decide whether to flush it. They don't know what to do. They're calling pregnancy centers and asking for counsel on what to do with the body. We've heard stories of couples going and burying that body, you know, in the park under a favorite tree, maybe near a playground where their child might have played. You know, to us as pro-life people, that seems like madness. But there's a humanity there. They're struggling to come to terms with the guilt that our society won't let them really deal with. And so they're coming up with creative solutions. We want to invite them into our community of fellowship and love and compassion and forgiveness. But it's very hard for us to do that sometimes because the pro-life movement has such a reputation, sometimes unfair and sometimes fair, for being judgmental of those folks. So, you know, we're called to really turn inward too and ask ourselves how welcoming and opening we're really being at times like these.
Yeah. Yeah. And that abortion, it touches so many families, and it could be unknown until later in life. And then, because, you know, you don't see the sibling that would have been your sibling, but then, you know, the pain of it is there, you know?
Yeah.
So can we go back to that National Day of Remembrance website? Let's look at that again. So this, people, let's scroll up, or you could say find a memorial. Is that how people find a memorial? And then, okay, wow. So these are all the locations.
Wow.
We can look by state. We could look at New Hampshire, for instance.
So these are all of the events that are happening.
These are the
this
locations
day?
across the country that we have. We're still in the recruiting stage right now. We're still a little early days.
Okay.
So right now we're still in the middle of recruiting leaders. These are locations where people could hold services. I don't think we have the actual confirmed locations listed yet because we're still in the middle of the recruiting process. We're still, you know, about a month out.
Okay, so I see where people at the top can host a memorial. Is that where people would
that's
go?
Another important thing to realize.
Let's host a memorial.
Right.
Yeah.
If there's not a memorial service in your area, then we can plug you in as a leader, you know, and it could be very simple. That's one of our big beliefs at the Pro-Life Action League is to make things scalable. So if you have a small group of pro-life friends that you could bring out to a memorial that's at your church on a Saturday, maybe after morning mass or something like that, you can have a very simple, pray the rosary together. Keep it simple. Maybe next year you grow it. You advertise more in the bulletin and try to make it a bigger event. Maybe you have guest speakers. We want to make it possible for people to get started with something simple, but then scale it up as years go by. So no one should feel intimidated. I've never organized it. I don't know how to write a press release or anything like that.
Yeah.
We got you covered. We've got templates for emails. We've got a flyer that you plug in with your information. It's very easy to print out. We have suggested, email templates and memes and all kinds of tools for people, no matter what event it is that we're doing, so that it's very easy for people to get involved, not just as volunteers, but also as local leaders. We're always trying to recruit more people into leadership on a small scale to a big scale.
Awesome. Wow. Let's spread this all over.
Yeah, Eric, something I was thinking about when you were going through this, and you were talking about how it's very difficult in our society for a woman to acknowledge that she's hurting from an abortion. It also made me think about miscarriage and how miscarriage, obviously we know a miscarriage is not the same thing as an abortion, because a miscarriage is the way that a baby's life ends naturally. Abortion is purposely using violence to end the life of a baby. But I think miscarriage doesn't get a lot of attention either. And the reason for that, I think, is because if you acknowledge that miscarriage is a loss, you have to acknowledge abortion is a loss of a child. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, it's just one more example of the kind of schizophrenia in our whole society around this stuff. When a celebrity posts an ultrasound image of their unborn baby, fans celebrate, but then that same celebrity maybe 2 months later is advocating for abortion of those very same babies. How is it possible that when the mom and dad, or even just the mom, is excited about the baby coming, it's something to celebrate, but otherwise it's not really a person at all? We talk about a baby when it's convenient. Other times we want to talk about a fetus. Those are the same persons that we're talking about. Look at our fetal homicide laws. In a state like Illinois, you may not be able to get compensated if someone does harm to you and causes your unborn baby to die, because in the state of Illinois, according to our Reproductive Health Act, a fetus has no rights. It specifically spells that out. So it's an area where our laws are in contradiction with each other, where our minds are in contradiction with each other. Our cultural activities are in contradiction. We pro-abortion people constantly talk about unborn babies when it's a baby that we're happy about, but then when we're not happy, we talk about a fetus.
Yeah, there's this line where does the child become human, and then it's kind of human, but then not that. It's like where does it begin? How did you guys get the second Saturday of September? How did just starting the National Day?
Good question. Well, in the first National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children was held in September of 2013, and it was held very close to the exact 25th anniversary of some burials. So going back to 1988, there was a historic burial that got a lot of national news coverage and local news coverage in Wisconsin. And these were babies that their bodies had been discovered by a security guard who was on duty at a business no longer in operation called VitalMed. VitalMed was a pathology lab, and one of their jobs was to take in the remains of abortions and test them, make sure that there was no pathology going on there, make sure the tissue was all intact and there was no issues, and then dispose of them, right? And these boxes and boxes and boxes of aborted babies were sitting on the loading dock of VitalMed, just sitting there waiting to be processed. And this security guard was a Christian guy. He had a conscience. And so he reached out to a pregnancy center to say, and this was in the suburbs of Chicago, I think it was like Schaumburg or Hoffman Estates or something. And he contacted the local pregnancy center to say he didn't know where else to turn. So there's these bodies in boxes on the back loading dock here. What do I do? The pregnancy center director reached out to the Pro-Life Action League and to Monica Miller, a dear friend of mine who has an organization called Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. And together they organized basically a raid. They went out at night and stole, as the courts would try to put it later, stole these remains, photographed them, recorded the injustice that was done to these children. Many of the images that we've used over the years to try to turn people's hearts towards compassion for the unborn child came from those photo shoots. Monica Miller of Citizens for Pro-Life Society is a very talented photographer. So she took photographs of these images, of these actual, not of these images, of these bodies, of these corpses of aborted babies. Each one of them was marked with the location that it had come from, the town. And so they organized with pro-life leaders in different locations around the country. They arranged to send the bodies to them for them to be buried. So some of those bodies were buried in 1988 I think it's the suburbs of Milwaukee. It was in Wisconsin. And so when the 25th anniversary of those dramatic events came back around, some of us started to ponder what we could do to mark that. And we decided to hold a big Memorial Day, National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children, to mark that 25th anniversary and to invite people to think about the impact of abortion. Because when you think about it, when you go out to a burial place, there's thousands of babies buried at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Chicago, or in the suburbs of Chicago. You stand above that grave and you think, below my feet are these tiny, tiny, tiny little bodies. And, 25 years ago, this body was ripped out of a woman's womb, the suction aspiration tube. That kid would be 24 years old now. A kid might have become a mother or a father, might have become a heroin dealer, for all I know. There's a whole life there that never took place. It becomes very real to you when you're standing there at the place where those bodies are interred. And over the years, I've returned now to Queen of Heaven Cemetery for the memorial service every year for many years now. And so now I'm thinking back and wondering, with those children who were aborted back in 1988, 87, 86, those years, would they have their own grandchildren now, maybe? You really start to think about the intergenerational impact of abortion, how it cascades through the years. You're cutting off a whole lifeline. You're cutting off a whole heritage, a whole branch of humanity when you kill one single little tiny, 8-week embryo.
Yeah.
So, those are the feelings that are evoked by this process. It makes it all very, very real to you. And that's why it's so important to me, and I'm so passionate about it. For so many people, abortion is just something they don't want to think about. They don't want to see it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it until suddenly it's in their life. They're faced with an unplanned pregnancy, or they get a girl pregnant, or their sister's dealing with this issue, or they find out that their mother aborted one of their siblings even years before. Now they have to deal with it. We're inviting people to enter into the mourning and the sorrow of abortion. Somebody has to. Somebody has to shed tears for these babies. Somebody has to shed tears for their mothers. Somebody has to care that a whole generation of human beings was cut out of the human family tree. We are those people. We invite people to mourn with us.
That's awesome. That's really, I think it's so wonderful that you guys have a day dedicated to that, and the history behind that is crazy, but so powerful. And I know just myself, I've been to the National Shrine of Divine Mercy, which is in Massachusetts, and they have and this isn't, you guys are doing this on a specific day, which I think is so important. They have a shrine of the Holy Innocents there, and I've been there, and that in itself was even just so powerful of being able to go there. And I've seen when I've gone, there were many people that were there and crying, and you don't know what they've been through, if they've had abortions themselves, or they've obviously been affected by abortion. But it is super powerful. But definitely, people should definitely participate in that National Day of Remembrance for aborted children.
Yeah, we should all be grieving, because these are, people, it's, whether we're directly related to them or not, these were millions of people, like,
Yeah.
gone.
And that's also millions of moms. It's millions of moms with a wound in their heart, and wounds that are so hard for them to face because of the social pressure to not care about your abortion.
Yeah, let's talk about unwanted abortion. What is Pro-Life Action League, and how are they addressing this this topic?
Yeah, it's a terrible phenomenon. A couple of years ago, the wing of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America that focuses on pro-life data and research, the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Charlotte Lozier published a paper on coerced and unwanted abortions, and they found David Reardon and some other researchers looked through. They did some surveys, and they discovered that women who have had abortions, they talked to women in their 40s. So these are women, this is many years now after their abortion. So they'd have one discrete, kind of cohort of women who'd had abortions. And they found that only about a third of women said that their abortion was a free choice that they made themselves and that had good consequences for them. This is contrary to the propaganda that abortion is always a free choice and that women are better off for it. Things like the Turnaway study that claim that women who are denied abortion suffer much worse, effects. That's not true. And their study doesn't even really say that at all. But what Reardon and his co-researchers discovered was that 2/3 of the women who were reflecting back on their abortions described them as not what they really wanted. Many of them said that while they did choose the abortion, it was not their first preference and that they wanted to parent the child, but that things like economic pressures or social pressures or feeling too young, kept them from doing what they really wanted to do in their hearts. About 25% of them explicitly said the abortion was unwanted. It was not what they wanted. They wanted to give birth to that child. And this is the most shocking of all. Fully 1 in 10 women in their 40s now, looking back, said that their abortions were coercive. They were coerced, whether it was a threat of violence, a threat of murder, a threat of unemployment, a threat of being unhoused, a mother or father saying, "You get that abortion, or I'm kicking you out of my house," which, by the way, is illegal. You cannot kick a minor child out of your home. That's against the law. We don't accept that as a society. Parents have a responsibility to care for their kids till they're 18. And, it's just astonishing, though, to think that 1 out of 10 women getting abortions, this is just a very early study. We need more data. That's part of what we've been working on, is trying to, in fact, we've even worked with pro-choice sociologists on branching out and getting funding for more research into this area so we can find out more about these unwanted abortions. But our early data suggests that fully 2/3 of abortions are not what the woman really wanted, not her free choice. And this is important for us, I think, rebuilding after some of the losses we've had since Dobbs came along, and we saw these referenda, and we saw public opinion beginning to turn. We saw more people turning against the pro-life movement. If we can reach out to people who are pro-choice and say, abortion's not so much of a free choice as you thought. Here's the data to show it. We can build common ground. And when I talk to pro-choice people, I have lots of pro-choice friends in the improv world and the arts world. When I can talk to reporters about this and bring up these questions, they always stop and listen. They are interested. They're interested to learn more about this because I'm going to take them at their word. They say they're not pro-abortion, they're pro-choice. They want it to be a choice. Well, look, it's often not a choice. If that's the case, and you combine that with, the fact that we have an obligation to help women so that they don't feel that that's their only choice, it gives us encouragement, because if we know that they don't really want abortions, then we know that offering some housing assistance or offering medical care or even just offering some affirmation that they can do it, that they could be a mom, will be enough to encourage them to choose life for their babies. That decision to get an abortion is made under so much pressure, and So much could turn it at the last moment. And so we want to be there. We want to be there to make that happen.
Okay, just want to plug the 2025 New Hampshire Right to Life Benefit Banquet. It's on October 16th. And our speaker, if you could scroll down, is Darlene Pollock. She's our keynote speaker. And she is pro-life and former vice president of Save the One, and she's part of an anti-trafficking organization. So it's going to be an amazing speech. So tickets are still available. Please visit nhrtl.org. You can get tickets for yourself, for a whole table, for your church. You can sponsor the banquet as a business, or anything helps to support the pro-life work in New Hampshire. All right.
She's an amazing speaker. I've heard her speak before, and she tells her story about how she herself was trafficked, and she actually escaped trafficking through a pregnancy resource center. They helped her get out of human trafficking. So definitely a powerful speaker, and definitely worth coming to the banquet and listening to her speak. So
yeah, if we scroll down a little bit more, here you can see where you can buy your ticket, become a sponsor. There's still early bird tickets before August 28th. So just like a week or so. So get your early bird price in. It's going to be at the Manchester Country Club. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. This was thanks for Eric Scheidler coming to the pod today. And hopefully you can get on Rogan someday. And this is just a stepping stone. All right. God bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for listening to part 1 of our episode with Eric Scheidler from the Pro-Life Action League. If you'd like to hear the rest of our interview with Eric, please tune in next week.
Be ever living. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Ever Living podcast, a podcast by New Hampshire Right to Life, New Hampshire's oldest and most active pro-life organization. You can learn more about our work and learn how to get involved at www.nhrtl.org. If you would like to donate to our mission, you can make a donation at www.nhrtl.org/donate. See you next week. May God bless you and be very near to you, and may you be ever living.